Shabbat Shalom. I'm Liora Landi. I'm Rabbi Landi's daughter, and I'm a rabbi in Westchester, so no longer from Israel, now from Westchester, from Chappaqua. So Shabbat Shalom, and this is Shaya, who's going to make it impossible for anyone to listen to me. So when I was a child, my parents would have both my brother and I come to synagogue every week. We would get ready for Shabbat. My mom would blow dry my hair. We'd put on our nice shoes. I liked this tradition of getting ready for Shabbat, and it made that time feel sacred and different. And now, 30-something odd years later, I have a different level of respect for my parents and the time and effort that they invested in getting ready when they themselves needed to be in full attention on Shabbat. With 3 children, looking nice and making sure that your kids look nice is quite a feat. Until about 2 minutes ago, this child did not have pants on. So the fact that they're all wearing some form of clothing right now, no less Shabbat clothing, is truly a big deal. My family and I moved from Israel 6 months ago. And while there's nothing like Shabbat in Israel, the country's not exactly known for being fancy or getting overly dressed up for anything, including Shabbat. People wore jeans to my wedding, even though it said no jeans. There are advantages and disadvantages to this mindset. An advantage of being that the come-as-you-are attitude makes everyone feel welcome no matter where they've come from. And the disadvantage is I like getting dressed up sometimes. On our first Shabbat in New York, where I'm now a rabbi, I made sure that my kids were dressed top dollar, showers had, hair brushed, prim and proper, but I was amused and also relieved to find out that we were by far overly dressed, and that Shabbat in my community feels very relaxed and a lot like Israel. And another synagogue that I considered working at required rabbis wear robes for Shabbat services, which would have been quite a leap for my laid-back jeans at synagogue Israeli Shabbat mentality and the fact that my kids don't like to put shoes on. Why do I mention dress code on this Shabbat? Why fixate on something that seems a bit mundane and unimportant? This Shabbat's Torah reading, Parshat Tetzaveh, found in Exodus chapter 27:20 to 30, verse 10, is about the sacred garments, among other things, worn by the priests and the high priests of the descendants of Aaron, the brother of Moses, which were worn by the Kohanim, the priests, throughout the history of temple worship for many, many generations. God tells Moses, make sacral vestments for your brother Aaron, for dignity and adornment. These are the vestments that are to make a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a fringed tunic, a headdress, and a sash. They shall be worn by Aaron and his sons when they enter the tent of meeting, and it shall be a law for all time for him and for his offspring to come. Some of that still comes into play today, including in our talitot, where some of us have blue fringes on them, which is a part of the required dress. And these clothes essentially make the man. They remind you that the role that you are in and the space that you hold is sacred. When I went to Reform Rabbinical School in Israel, they took us on a field trip to the Third Temple Museum in Jerusalem. It exists. They have a plan in which the Underground Railroad will stop there. They've planned it out with the engineering, and it's been approved. It's a lot of resources used for something that I don't think will happen, but it's okay. And it has exact replicas of this garb. It is intricate, beautiful, exact, and made me appreciate the process that the Kohanim, the priests, must have gone through in putting on their uniform and reminding themselves that they are in a sacred role. That is one of the reasons that rabbis or whoever's leading on Friday night puts on a talit to remember the sanctity of that moment. Last week, literally 3 days before coming to Kansas City, I returned from a week and a half in Israel, my first time back in 6 months, where I led a synagogue trip for my community. Israel was my home for 17 years. It is where I became an adult, got married, had my children, and thought that I'd be for probably the rest of my life. It's a place that I'm very invested in politically, personally, and Jewishly, and if you want to know why I'm not there, you can ask me at Kiddush. Israel is in a very complicated and sad moment, to say the least. It is hurting in ways that I can't exactly articulate, and it's almost like a 4-month-long shiva. And if you've been to a shiva house, everyone's subdued, comes to life, eats, talks, and then goes back to being subdued. People are living and reliving their trauma, and people are living in literal existential crisis, waiting for their husbands, sons, also wives and daughters to return home from captivity, and also to return home from war. Every minute feels both like a miracle and a nightmare. However, what is noticeable more than anything else is how much the uniform plays a role in daily life. Soldiers rotate in and out of civilianhood, showering, doing their laundry, wearing jeans home, while for a 36-hour stint, but carry around their M16s wherever they go and then go back to war hours later. Hostage families walk around with dog tags with their children's name on it. That's becoming uniform. There's all sorts of different uniforms at this moment, people sending different kinds of messages. Some of them don't go with the other. Israel's in a really difficult place right now. I've spent a lot of time thinking about the necessity of these uniforms, not just about the unity and the uniformity in the army and in other parts of society where people want to identify and people want to have something that makes them feel a part of a community, but also the uniform reminds us about the sanctity of the task, the weight of the task ahead, to protect, to prevent harm, to support one another, and to also hold the horrid, terrible, and unseemly sights of war. All of this is held in uniform. Ask doctors, ask nurses, ask police officers. When they're in their uniform, they can hold a lot. When they take it off, it's something else. And Friday afternoons in Jerusalem these days are a mix of the smells of Shabbat. Everyone hustling and bustling, to and from the market, getting ready, lines of laundry strewn with green fatigues of boys that have come home from war, and sights of family who have put on their Shabbat white uniform, their fancy Shabbat jeans, those exist, who use clothes just as a priest did to differentiate between the sacred, the holy, the regular, and the absurd, because this moment is absurd. May we all find uniforms that bring us direction, that bring us sanctity, that bring us clarity, that bring us community. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.